It wasn't always easy. The Rockies really made them work for it, but the D-backs beat them for the second time this season and are now 6-7 on the year.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? Always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com to see all of my latest work. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. On today's podcast, we'll talk about that not so pretty series win against the Colorado Rockies. We'll preview the next series against the St. Louis Cardinals and talk about how the D-backs need more offense late in games. But before we get into the podcast, I first want to say thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. Our goal is to hit 2,000 subscribers by the All-Star break. So please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's get into the podcast and let's talk about that series against the Colorado Rockies, because the D-backs were on a 5-game losing streak after game 1 against the Rockies. But after back-to-back victories, the D-backs are back in the win column, back to their winning ways. But in this series, it wasn't always pretty. The D-backs really had to work for these last 2 wins against the Rockies. Credit to the Rockies. The D-backs would score in the first inning. The Rockies would come back immediately and respond in this series. Their pitching was very solid. The D-backs destroyed this Rockies pitching the first time around. Freeland, Quantrill, Gomber, it didn't matter. They all got cooked the first time around at Chase Field, but not this time around at Coors Field. All 3 of them stepped up, and you can say they outpitched each D-back starter in every game this series. So major respect to the Colorado Rockies for making the D-backs really battle it out in this series and not just rolling over. I wouldn't say they rolled over the first time, but the D-backs offense was just so good that first series. It really didn't matter what the Rockies offense did. And that Rockies defense that first series really struggled. They weren't that much better in this second series, but the offense wasn't much better for the Colorado Rockies. And most importantly, the pitching stepped up in a big way for the Rockies, especially at Coors Field. But in this finale, it was the D-backs who were victorious. It was the D-backs in game 2 who were victorious. And so that means they were able to take the series. And in this finale, we saw a few things. We saw the top of the order look really good. We saw some up and downs from Blaze Alexander, but for the most part, I'm happy with what I saw. Tommy Henry battled, and the bullpen, despite Kevin Ginkel's shakiness at times in the 9th inning, was really good. Starting with the top of the lineup, Corbin Carroll got it going once again in this game. He started off in the top of the first with a double, and then Lourdes Gurriel, who has been on fire to start the season, the D-backs MVP, brings Corbin Carroll home in the first. D-backs end up putting up 1 run in the first, another run in the second inning. The best first inning scoring team in Major League Baseball, and just the best team at striking first against their opponent. The top of the lineup, Marte 2 hits, Carroll a hit. Gurriel 2 hits, Walker a hit, and Suarez got a big knock as well. He came through late in the game, just able to plunk it down in left field. Nolan Jones tries to dive, tries to make the play. It's Suarez who gets the double to give the D-backs a 2-run lead. Gurriel with the double to score Carroll once again in the 7th to tie it up. And we'll be talking about the D-backs needing more late offense in segment number 3 because it's something that they got in this game, and it's not something that they've gotten enough this season. But very happy to see Gurriel, of course, come through once again with Carroll on the bases. I mean, Carroll scores from first. You see the speed from him. Gurriel clutch, then Suarez clutches it out in the 9th inning. Great job by the top of the D-backs lineup. Blaze Alexander, he has himself 2 hits, including a home run. But the reason why it was an up and down game is because he did have himself a defensive error as well. The defense is something that has been a struggle for Blaze so far to start the year. But when your slash line is checks the stats 345, 424, 552, you will take a couple errors when it comes to Blaze Alexander. Tommy Henry once again battled in this start. He hasn't been perfect his last 2 starts, but he's done enough to keep the D-backs in their games. Once again, in this one, 5 innings, 2 earned runs. I mean, an error didn't help him out by Blaze Alexander, which led to a home run allowed. But 95 pitches through 5 innings lets you know it's not easy for Tommy Henry. He's not exactly fooling these hitters. He did rack up 6 strikeouts today, 8 whiffs on 49 swings, but he's not going to be perfect out there. At times, his command is going to be shaky, 3 walks allowed, but for the most part, if you can get to the 5th inning with Tommy Henry and gives up 3 earned runs or less, I think you will take that every time. I think the same is also true for Ryan Nelson, who we'll talk about in segment number 2. So for Tommy Henry, even though he's not a perfect pitcher, if he's out there, if he's battling, if he's keeping you in the game, and then you could get to the bullpen with 3 runs allowed or less by the opposing team, I think you will take that for if you're the D-backs until at least, the Monties and the Erods of the world come back to the rotation fully healthy. And then finally, the bullpen looked really good in this finale. Bryce Jarvis, who's been very down to start the season, extended innings in this one, and he looked immaculate. 2.2 innings pitch, 1 hit, 3 strikeouts by Bryce Jarvis. Really, really strong stuff. Even made an incredible defensive play where he had to track down the ball to his left, throw across his body to first base. Really tough play. Looked really athletic doing it. Joe Mantiply, he came in. He got his 1 out on 3 pitches. He did his job. And then Kevin Ginkel in the 9th made us sweat just a little bit. 2 walks allowed. Gave up a hit as well. Loaded the bases up in the 9th, but made some big pitches. Got 2 strikeouts and was able to walk away after 29 pitches thrown with the save. D-backs able to walk away with the game 3 victory and the series victory, and now they have beaten the Colorado Rockies already twice on this short season. And up next, the D-backs will face the St. Louis Cardinals, which we'll preview in segment number 2. And I want to talk to you guys now about this little thing in case you're looking for some insurance. The best place to go, the best marketplace to find insurance is going to be Policy Genius, because finding the right policy shouldn't be time consuming and it shouldn't be overwhelming. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius helps you compare your options from the top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. Talk to a team of award winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. So that's why you need Policy Genius. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/locked on MLB or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/locked on MLB. All right. Let's get back into the Locked on Dimebacks podcast. If you like the show, please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Dimebacks on both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. But now let's get back into the podcast and let's preview the next series against the St. Louis Cardinals, who are 500 on the season. They are 6-6, and going into this series, I'm feeling pretty good about the D-backs. I know they look shaky against the Rockies. I know they were on a 5-game losing streak before that, but I just feel like this St. Louis Cardinals team is old, and I feel like this should be a series where the D-backs are favored. They have the younger legs. They have the better bats. The bats are playing really well for the D-backs. They are not playing well for the Cardinals. The pitchers are better for the D-backs. I just think up and down, this D-back team matches up really well against this Cardinals team. I think based off the talent on paper, the D-backs should definitely beat the St. Louis Cardinals. I actually think this series could either be a confidence booster for D-backs pitchers going against that poor St. Louis Cardinals offense, or it could be a confidence killer for D-backs fans in our D-backs pitchers, because if you can't do it, if you can't pitch well against this Cardinals offense, I don't know who you're going to pitch well against. Yes, you could have said that against the Colorado Rockies, but the Rockies by the numbers are not a bad offensive team. The same cannot be said for the St. Louis Cardinals. By the numbers, the Cardinals are probably the second worst offense in the National League. You can make that argument. It's at least a bottom three offense in the National League. They are dead last in home runs. They are third from last in steals. They are second to last in OPS, sixth lowest runs in the National League. Their offense has been absolutely putrid to start the year. They are scoring on a very low rate so far. When you look up and down the lineup, there's not a lot of guys really playing too well for that Cardinals team. The two best players are probably their catchers, Herrera and Contreras. And when your two best players are catchers in your lineup, your team probably isn't that good unless you're like the Baltimore Orioles or something. When I'm looking at the rest of that lineup, I'm just not very concerned with how people are playing right now. I'm just not concerned with many dudes in that lineup. Like Goldie and Arenado, the two stars, the two pillars in that Cardinals lineup, just off to an incredibly slow start. Arenado already coming off a season where he wasn't very good. Goldie now has decided to join him. The two in 93 at bats combined, 4 extra base hits on the season. The slugging has not been there for those two guys. I think they have 1 home run combined with 3 doubles. There just hasn't been any power whatsoever for those two guys. And I don't want this series to be the one that gets those two stars going. Then when I'm looking at the pitching matchups for this series, we got lefty Steven Matz on the mound in game 1 going against Brandon Pfaadt. Matz, sinker ball pitcher who has been very effective this year. So I want to see if he can keep that going against one of the best offenses in baseball. And then for Pfaadt, would love to see him work on his secondary stuff. He's someone that I think has shown flashes this year. I thought he looked good against the Rockies. I thought he had moments against the Atlanta Braves, but couldn't be effective for a complete game. I want to see a complete game from Pfaadt in this one. His fastball has been super effective and really dominant to start the year, but his secondary stuff has not been. So I want to see him work off his fastball in this series, and hopefully his secondary pitches look better. Kyle Gibson versus Ryan Nelson in game number 2. Kyle Gibson is someone that has been absolutely horrendous throughout his entire career. His ERA is like 5 for his career. When you look at his recent seasons, every single season, his ERA is like 5.5. Last year, he led the leagues in like hits allowed and was one of the league leaders in earned runs allowed. Like Kyle Gibson has really never been good throughout his career, and I don't know how he keeps getting like jobs in Major League Baseball. When you're looking at his pitching arsenal, it's going to be the hard stuff that you want to wait for. His fastball, his cutter, those two pitches have been absolutely destroyed by opposing batters this year. So hopefully the D-backs see some fastballs and cutters in this game, because if they do, they can absolutely tee off against those pitches for Ryan Nelson. I'm hoping he can replicate his last start, because like Tommy Henry, we're just in battle mode right now, right? For these replacement level starters, it's not about going out there and looking great. It's about going out there and just mustering an effort, going out there 5 innings, 3 earned runs or less. Like, we don't need a lot. We don't need you to be elite, but we need you to be good enough and get the game to the bullpen. Ryan Nelson and Tommy Henry have both done that their last starts. And so hopefully Ryan Nelson can keep it going once again in this one. In his most recent start against the Yankees, 5 innings, 3 earned runs, 2 home runs allowed, 7 strikeouts, no walks. Up and down performance, but did enough to help the D backs to help put the D backs in position to win that game. Let's see if he can do it one more time. And then Zach Gallen in game number 3 against Miles Mikolas. Gallen was really good against the New York Yankees, but shaky against the Colorado Rockies. Want to see that swing and miss stuff that we saw against the Rockies without the shakiness, without the command issues. I want to see a clean Zach Gallen game. So let's see if he can do that. For Miles Mikolas, he's someone that just hasn't been that good the last couple years. When you look at his hits per nine, double digits the last 2 seasons. He's someone that gives up a lot of contact, hoping the D-backs can get in on some of that contact. I think this Cardinals team has more talent than what they've shown, but they've also been a disappointing team going back to last season. And the numbers tell us the D-backs should win this series, and I will be disappointed if they don't. So hopefully the D-backs, with all the numbers pointing in their direction, they should be favored in this series against the Cardinals, going against an inferior rotation and lineup. The D-backs should hopefully be set up for another series win. And we'll talk about one of the ways that the D-backs can secure a series win in segment number 3. But before we get into that little conversation about the D-backs and their late game offense, we first need to talk to you guys about FanDuel, because if you want to place any futures bets down on the D-backs, the best place to do that is FanDuel, of course, because it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. My favorite thing to do is the same game parlay. When the D-backs are playing, give me Carroll over on total bases. Give me Marte RBI, and give me that D-backs money line. Love doing that 3-legger, and when it pays out, I feel good about myself. And if you want to feel good about yourself, visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's talk about one other area the D-backs need to improve in if they want to become a better team, especially by the postseason, right? Because one area the D-backs have been really bad at so far is scoring late inning runs. But before we even get into that conversation, I actually first want to talk about the report that the D-backs have signed a new minor leaguer, Colton Wong. Just want to broach the idea of, could we see the days of Jace Peterson numbered? Colton Wong, lefty. Does this mean Jace Peterson is going to lose his job to him? I don't know. Just want to throw that out there and speculate. Maybe you want to replace him with a Kevin Newman, and then your two lefties are Peterson and Colton Wong, and then you still have Blaze Alexander as your righty until Geraldo Perdomo gets back. I don't know. Just found it interesting that the D-backs signed Colton Wong. Just keep that on your radar for a potential call up in the future. But now let's get back into our original topic. D-backs offense needing to be better at scoring runs late in games because they were able to do it in this finale against the Colorado Rockies, but it's an outlier against what we've seen from the rest of the season. The D-backs typically have not been a good run scoring team from the seventh inning on this year. And it's one of those areas the D-backs are going to have to improve in as the season wears on, because if you can't score runs late, it's going to be hard to win games, especially the games against the best teams, because they never stop scoring runs. When you actually break it down by innings, the first 3 innings of a ball game, the D-backs have a 369 average and a 1011 OPS, which makes sense, right? We've talked about how this D-backs team is the best first inning scoring team in baseball, the best team at scoring first and striking first. So it makes sense. This team is absolutely elite the first 3 innings of a ball game. Innings 4 through 6, D backs numbers fall to a 270 average and a 728 OPS. But then those final 3 innings, D backs 111 average, 480 OPS. Their offense falls off a cliff from the seventh inning on, and that just can't happen. When the game is considered late and close, this D backs offense absolutely shrivels up. And what is late and close, you ask? Seventh inning or later, D backs are either up a run, tied, or down a run. And so on the season, when the game is considered late and close, this D backs team only has 4 hits on the season. They are not clutch right now when the game is late, which is really weird because this D-backs team is actually super clutch when they have runners in scoring position. They're just not clutch when it's a late game. And it's not all their fault. They have run into a little bit of unluckiness, right? How many times in the last week have we seen a ball rip down the right sideline and then the first baseman just picks it up and steps on first? How many times have we seen a guy get doubled up on the base pass, right? Because it's a line drive rocket ship and you're just caught in no man's land. The D backs have been a little bit unlucky at times when it comes to their base running and just the placement of their hits. But still, the point still stands. The D backs need to be better late in games. And some of the reason why the D backs offense isn't as good late in games is because the offense is so good early, right? When you put up 14 runs in 1 inning, you probably don't need to put up many more runs after that. There's a bunch of games where this D backs offense seemingly coasts because they go up 4, 5, 6, 14 runs after 3 innings. And so it's like, how many more runs do I actually need to score? But teams like the Yankees and Braves showed you can never score enough runs. Always score, score, score. I think over the last 2 years, we've seen a trend where it feels easier than ever to erase a 6 to 8 run deficit. I think we've seen it in the NBA as well. It's just a lot easier to go on a run and erase a big lead nowadays. So if you're the D-backs, the Braves or Dodgers, where your lineup goes 7 or 8 deep, it just makes it that much easier for your team to come back in games when you just have more quality players, quality at bats at the end of your lineup. So D-backs need to get better in that area. Last year, this team were the answer backs. This year, they're the answer first backs. Would love to marry those two teams so they can score 12 runs a game. That's probably not going to happen, but I would at least like to see more games like this series finale against the Colorado Rockies where they put up some runs after the seventh inning. So hopefully the D backs can do more of that going forward. Now that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. Off day for the D backs. So one look at some numbers and stats pertain to how they're doing the first couple weeks of the season. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.